today's Green Citizen webinar. My name is Neighbor Hernandez, and today I'll be presenting on low impact, zero waste living. Throughout this presentation, we'll explore how our everyday choices, from the products we buy to how we use and dispose of them, can have a significant impact on the environment. We'll discuss what low impact and zero waste living actually mean, why single-use pollution has become such a global challenge, and most importantly, practical actions that each one of us can take to reduce waste in our daily use. The goal isn't to be perfect, it's to understand how small, intentional choices can add up to meaningful environmental change. So with that, let's get started. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce today's speakers and members of our Green Citizen team. Joining us today as our featured speakers are Adriana Cao and Karen Chambers. Adriana Cao is the founder of Useful, the first refillery and zero waste store in Dallas-Fort Worth area. With a background in marketing, operations, and strategy, Adriana has built her business around making sustainable living more accessible through refillery everyday products, and you'll hear more of her as we go on with the Q&A. As well with Karen Chambers, our next expert, she brings more than 35 years of corporate experience in program and risk management, leadership development, finance, and information technology. She's also an active volunteer with One Earth, One Chance, Texas A&M AgriLife Extensions, and several other community organizations. Once again, my name is Neighbor Hernandez, and I'll be presenting today's webinar. I'm currently a student at UT Austin and a volunteer with One Earth, One Chance, where I've had the opportunity to contribute to sustainability education initiatives. And lastly, joining us today is Rachel Park, a volunteer with One Earth, One Chance, and a student at Centennial High School. Rachel will be helping facilitate our expert discussion by leading the Q&A portion of today's webinar. During the first part of today's session, I'll introduce the key concepts behind low impact and zero waste living and share practical strategies for incorporating them into everyday life. Then we'll transition into a moderate discussion where Rachel will lead the Q&A with our guest speakers, Karen and Adriana, who will share their expertise and real-world experiences. So let's go right ahead. Before we start looking at practical ways to reduce waste, I'd like to introduce a few key concepts that will come up throughout the rest of today's presentation. The first is our linear economy. For many years, society has followed a simple pattern of take, make, and waste. We extract raw materials, manufacture products, use them for a period of time, and then throw them away. While this system has made products convenient and widely available, it has also contributed to overflowing landfills, plastic pollutions, and increased greenhouse gas emissions. A more sustainable alternative to this is the circular economy. Instead of treating products as disposable, a circular economy keeps materials in use for as long as possible by encouraging people to repair, reuse, reshare, refurbish, and recycle products rather than immediately replacing them. The goal is to reduce waste while making better use of the resources we already have. Another term is zero waste living. Despite the name, zero waste doesn't mean producing absolutely no trash. It's the goal intended, but instead, it focuses on preventing waste before it's created and keeping as much materials as possible out of landfills, incinerators, and our oceans. You'll also see the term carbon footprint. Carbon footprint measures the greenhouse gas emissions associated with a product or activity. Things like packaging, transportation, manufacturing, ingredients, and even how a product is disposed of all contribute to its overall carbon footprint. Finally, low impact living is the broadest concept we'll discuss today. It goes beyond simply reducing trash or lowering carbon emissions. It also considers factors like water use, energy consumption, pollution, habitat protection, and making more ethical and sustainable purchasing decisions. If you look to the waste hierarchy on the right, it reminds us that our first priority should always be to reduce and reuse whenever possible. Recycling is still important, but preventing waste in the first place has an even greater environmental impact. The bicycle example at the bottom brings all these ideas together. Imagine you need a bicycle. Instead of buying a brand new one, you purchase a used bike. That decision supports the circular economy because you're extending the life of an existing product. It supports zero waste by preventing another item from eventually becoming unnecessary waste. The decision supports the circular economy because you're extending the life of an existing product. It supports zero waste by preventing another item from eventually becoming unnecessary waste. Riding the bicycle instead of driving also reduces greenhouse gas emissions, lowering your carbon footprint. And because no new bicycles had to be manufactured, you're conserving raw materials and energy, making it a low impact choice overall. All of this shows us that these four concepts, circular economy, zero waste, carbon footprint, and low impact living, provide the foundation for everything we'll discuss throughout the rest of today's presentation. Now that we've established the key concepts behind low impact and zero waste living, let's look at one of the biggest environmental challenges these ideas are trying to solve: single-use pollution. Single-use products are items that are designed to be used once and then thrown away, often after only a few minutes. Some common examples include plastic bags, water bottles, coffee cups, straws, disposable cutlery, takeout containers, and food packaging. Although these products are convenient, that convenience comes with a cost. Every single-use item requires raw materials, energy, and water to manufacture before it's even used. Most traditional plastics are made from coal, crude oil, and natural gas, which are non-renewable fossil fuels. You may also hear about bioplastics, which are made from plant-based materials. While they may sound like a complete solution, many bioplastics are structurally similar to traditional plastics and can still remain in the environment for a long time if they aren't disposed of properly. The scale of this issue is significant. As shown on the slide, plastic waste now accounts for about 12.5% of the world's municipal solid waste, while only about 10% of plastics is recycled globally. That means the vast majority ends up in landfills, incinerators, or the natural environment. The infographic summarizes the broader impact of single-use pollutions. It contributes to resource depletion by using valuable raw materials, environmental pollution that affects our land and waterways, economic costs associated with waste management and cleanup, and even biodiversity loss, as wildlife and ecosystems are harmed by plastic pollutions. These impacts show that something we may use for only a few minutes can continue affecting the environment for decades. One of the biggest misconceptions about plastics is that once we throw it away, it simply disappears. In reality, that's far from the truth. This timeline on the right, it's a decomposition timeline, shows how long some common plastic products remain in the environment. Items like plastic water bottles, disposable diapers, and fishing line can take hundreds of years to break down. Even then, plastics don't truly decompose. It gradually breaks apart until tiny pieces known as microplastics. These microplastics are found in our soil, river, lakes, and oceans. They can absorb harmful chemicals, be eaten by fish and other wildlife, and eventually make their way into the human food chain through the food and water we consume. It's also important to remember that the environmental impact begins long before a product is thrown away. Producing single-use plastics requires large amounts of energy and fossil fuels, contributing to greenhouse gas emissions throughout the manufacturing process. Today, plastic waste makes up approximately 80% of all marine litter, threatening marine ecosystems while also affecting coastal communities that rely on healthy oceans for tourism, fishing, and local economies. Understanding these long-term impacts helps explain why reducing our use of single-use plastics is one of the most effective ways we can protect both our environment and our own health. Now that we've looked at environmental impacts of single-use plastics, let's shift our focus to solutions. One of the simplest ways to reduce waste is by replacing disposable products with reusable alternatives whenever possible. Reusable items not only help reduce the amount of waste we generate, but they can also save money over time because they can be used again and again instead of being replaced after every use. This graphic to the right shows a few examples that many of us can easily incorporate into our daily lives, such as carrying a reusable shopping bag, using a refillable water bottle, bringing reusable food containers, or switching to reusable straws. While each one of these changes may seem small on its own, together they significantly reduce the amount of single-use waste we produce. You may also see products labeled as biodegradable or compostable, but it's important to understand that these terms are not interchangeable. Biodegradable materials can break down naturally over time in soil or water, while compostable products are designed to decompose under specific conditions, often in industrial composting facilities where temperature, moisture, and microorganisms are carefully controlled. It's also worth being cautious about environmental claims. The Federal Trade Commission considers it misleading to market a product as biodegradable if it will not completely decompose within 1 year after being disposed of in a landfill or incinerator. In other words, not every product labeled green actually performs the way consumers might expect. Another common misconception is that simply replacing plastics with paper automatically makes a product more sustainable. While paper is biodegradable, it isn't always the better option. Paper products are generally less durable, require more energy to manufacture, and rely on trees as raw materials, which can contribute to deforestation when they aren't sourced properly or responsibly. The most sustainable choice isn't simply switching from one disposable material to another. It's reducing our reliance on disposable products altogether by choosing durable, reusable items whenever we can. Now let's look at one of the easiest places to start reducing waste, the kitchen. We all use it. Because it's where many of us cook, eat, and shop for every day, it's also where many of our daily habits can have the biggest impact. One simple change is to reduce the amount of single-use packaging we bring home in the first place. When possible, consider shopping at stores that encourage reusable bags, bring your own tote bags and produce bags, or purchasing foods in bulk. Buying larger quantities of staple items like grains, beans, or rice can often reduce unnecessary packaging while also cutting down on the numbers of shopping trips. Another important way to reduce waste is by making the most of the food we already have. Instead of throwing away wilted vegetables, they can be used to make homemade stock. Overripe fruit can be frozen for smoothies, and stale bread can be turned into croutons or breadcrumbs. Small habits like these help reduce food waste while saving money. We can also replace products we use once with reusable alternatives. Rather than buying plastic water bottles, plastic bags, disposable food containers, or plastic straws, we can switch to refillable water bottles, cloth shopping bags, reusable food containers, and metal straws that can be used for years. This slide highlights a few other thoughtful choices, like choosing loose produce instead of individually packaged fruits and vegetables. Bringing your own containers for takeout when possible, and avoiding products that can easily become litter and harm wildlife, such as plastic beverage rings or disposable stirrers. The goal isn't to change everything overnight. It's to recognize that many of the choices we make in the kitchen are opportunities to reduce waste before it's even created. The bathroom is another place where many of the products we use every day are designed to be thrown away after a short period of time. While each item may seem insignificant on its own, together, they create a surprising amount of plastic waste over the course of a year. One simple way to reduce the waste is by switching from products packaged in plastic bags to solid alternatives. Examples are shampoo bars, conditioner bars, body wash bars, and solid deodorants. These products often last longer and eliminate the need for single-use plastic packaging. We can also replace disposable products with more durable ones. For example, instead of using plastic razors or toothbrushes that need to be replaced frequently, we can use a metal safety razor, a bamboo toothbrush, or reusable electric toothbrushes, even toothpaste tablets, which eliminate the need for traditional plastic toothpaste tubes. These options generate far less waste over time. Another important thing to consider is what's inside the products we use. Choosing personal care and cleaning products made with biodegradable plant-based ingredients help reduce the release of harmful chemicals in our waterways. Similarly, avoiding products that contain microplastic beads, such as some exfoliating scrubs, help prevent tiny plastic particles from entering rivers and oceans. A simple alternative is making your own scrub using ingredients like sugar, salt, or coffee grounds. Likewise, silicone swabs can be reusable alternatives to disposable cotton swabs for those who choose to use them. Finally, reducing waste isn't always about buying something new. Sometimes it's simply about changing a habit, such as reusing trash liners when appropriate instead of replacing them after every cleaning. The common theme across all these examples is that small adjustments to our daily routines can significantly reduce waste without sacrificing convenience. Our clothing choices also have a significant environmental impact, and it's the one people least think about. The fashion industry uses large amounts of water, energy, and raw materials, and the rise of fast fashion has encouraged people to purchase clothing more frequently than they actually need. A simple way to become more mindful consumer is to follow what's known as the 30 wear rule. Before buying a new item, ask yourself, will I realistically wear this at least 30 times? If the answer is no, it may be worth reconsidering the purchase. When you do buy clothing, choosing durable garments made from natural fibers such as organic cotton, linen, hemp, or wood can help reduce environmental impact. These materials are generally longer lasting and more biodegradable than many synthetic fabrics. Low impact living also means extending the life of clothing that's already in circulation. Instead of always buying new, consider buying secondhand, renting, swapping, or sharing clothing, even thrifting. And when you no longer need an item, try reselling, gifting, or donating it so it can continue to be used. Some companies even recycle old textiles into new clothing, upholsteries, or installation, helping keep materials out of landfills. Caring for our clothes sustainably is just as important. Spot cleaning garments when possible, choosing liquid carbon dioxide dry cleaning when available, and recycling plastic garment bags are all ways to reduce waste and minimize the environmental impact of clothing care. The comparison on the right to the bottom summarizes these ideas as well. Instead of supporting fast fashion, we can embrace the 30-wear rule. Rather than choosing inexpensive synthetic fabrics, we can invest in durable natural materials. Instead of consumerism, we can practice minimalism by buying only what we truly need. And when professional cleaning is necessary, we can look for more environmentally friendly dry cleaning options. Building a sustainable wardrobe isn't about never buying new clothes. It's about making thoughtful choices that help our clothing last longer, reduce waste, and make better use of resources that have already been invested in producing them. So far, we've discussed on reducing waste in the kitchen, bathroom, and wardrobe. But low impact living goes beyond the products we buy. It's also about the everyday decisions we make in areas like transportation, food, energy use, and even our digital habits. Let's start with transportation. Short flights and driving alone in gasoline-powered vehicles generally have much higher environmental impact than alternatives, like public transportation, cycling, trains, or carpooling. Even when we're shopping online, our choices matter. Choosing standard shipping instead of expedited shipping allows companies to consolidate deliveries, helping reduce transportation-related carbon emissions. Next are our dietary choices. The food we eat has a significant environmental footprint. Producing resource-intensive foods, particularly factory farm beef and dairy, requires large amount of land, water, and energy, and contributes to deforestation and biodiversity loss. Incorporating more local and seasonal fruits and vegetables into our meals, or even growing herbs or vegetables at home, can help reduce the impact while supporting more sustainable food systems. Our homes also offer many opportunities to lower our environmental footprint. Choosing renewable energy plans when they're available, seeing air leaks around doors and windows, using smart thermostats, switching to LED lightings, and using rechargeable batteries are all practical ways to reduce energy consumption while often lowering utility costs. Finally, there's an area that many people don't immediately associate with sustainability: our digital habits. Extending the lives of our phones and other electronics helps reduce the electronic waste. We can also clean out unnecessary emails and cloud storage, choose remanufactured toner cartridges, reduce unnecessary printing, unsubscribe from unwanted catalogs and paper mail, or even post no solicitation sign to reduce junk mail before it reaches our homes. What I like about this slide is that it shows sustainability isn't limited to one part of our lives. Whether we're choosing how to travel, what to eat, how we use energy, or even how we manage our technology, each decision is an opportunity to reduce our environmental impact. When these small decisions become everyday habits, they create meaningful change over time. Throughout today's presentation, we discussed on the actions that individuals can take to reduce waste. But creating a more sustainable future doesn't depend on individuals alone. Governments, businesses, and industries all play an essential role in making low-impact living more accessible. Around the world, we've already seen this happen. Today, more than 100 countries, along with several US states, have adopted bans or restrictions on single-use plastics and styrofoam, helping reduce unnecessary waste before it even reaches landfills or our oceans. Businesses have also begun encouraging more sustainable habits. Many retailers now charge for disposable plastic bags or encourage customers to bring reusable ones instead. For example, after Australia's largest supermarket chains, Coles and Woolworths, stopped providing free single-use plastic bags, the number of plastic bags in circulation has dropped by about 80%. Another well-known example comes from Ireland, where a plastic bag levy reduced plastic bag use by approximately 90%, while also generating funding for environmental programs. It's a great example of how public policy can successfully encourage long-term behavior changes. Governments are also introducing broader policies that support sustainability. For example, the European Union's packaging and packaging waste regulation establishes stricter requirements for recyclable packaging, reduces unnecessary packaging, and encourages reusable materials as part of a more circular economy. Whether it's plastic bag taxes, strong recycling regulations, more sustainable packaging, or circular economy initiatives, these efforts show that when governments, businesses, and consumers work together, sustainability choices become easier, more accessible, and ultimately more effective. As we begin wrapping up today's presentation, I'd like to leave you with one final idea. Creating a more sustainable future requires both individual action and systemic change. Neither one can solve the problem on its own. We have to work best together. Let's start with what we can do as individuals. One of the simplest habits we can develop is to pause before making a purchase and ask ourselves whether the item is truly necessary or if we already own something that serves the same purpose. Often, the most sustainable choice is not buying something new at all. When we do make purchases, it's important to look beyond marketing claims. Choosing products with independent certifications, such as EcoCert, Fairtrade, or FSC certified, can help us identify products that meet recognized environmental or ethical standards and avoid greenwashing. It's also helpful to remember that you can't buy your way into a zero waste lifestyle. The most sustainable product is usually the one you already own. Using items until they no longer function, rather than replacing them prematurely, is often one of the most impactful choices we can make. Finally, don't let sustainability feel overwhelming. As the quote on the slide reminds us, we don't need a handful of people living zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. Every reusable bottle, every repaired item, and every thoughtful decision contribute to meaningful progress. At the same time, individual choices help drive larger change. When consumers consistently choose more sustainable products, companies respond by improving their products, reducing unnecessary packaging, and creating more sustainable supply chains to meet that demand. Grassroots movements and community support also encourage governments to adopt stronger environmental policies, and our everyday actions can influence the people around us. Something as simple as bringing a reusable cup to a coffee shop or carrying a reusable shopping bag can normalize these behaviors and inspire friends, families, even coworkers to make similar choices. Ultimately, lasting environmental progress happens when individuals like us take actions and broader systemic efforts reinforce one another. Every thoughtful choice we make helps create a culture where sustainability becomes not the exception, but the expectation. So now, we'd like to shift from this presentation into conversation with our guest speakers. I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Rachel, who will start the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to ask our experts some questions. And to kick things off, I wanted to ask Karen what the difference is between low impact living and zero waste living.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Low impact living focuses on reducing your overall environmental footprint, including energy use, water consumption, and carbon emissions. Zero waste living focuses specifically on eliminating the trash use into landfills by reusing, recycling, and composting everything. But I don't recommend trying to be perfect because that can cause eco-anxiety.
Definitely. I think that's a really important distinction, especially with how often those terms get used interchangeably. And then to build on the idea of low impact living, how does shopping locally and seasonally contribute to reducing environmental impact?
Okay, so local and seasonal shopping significantly cuts down on food miles. That is the distance the food travels from your farm to your plate. Shopping locally drastically reduces transportation greenhouse gas emissions from planes and trucks. It also eliminates the need for heavy plastic packaging and chemical preservatives that are used to keep food fresh during those long transits.
Yeah, that's a great reminder that these small decisions can have a much bigger impact than people realize. And for people who think that sustainability is expensive, how can someone practice low impact living on a tight budget?
So, low impact living is actually rooted in consuming less, which saves money. The most sustainable, budget friendly product is always the one you already own. You guys made allude to that earlier in the presentation. You can also buy secondhand clothing and furniture. You can fix items instead of replacing them, and you can make DIY household cleaners using cheap ingredients like vinegar, baking soda, isopropyl alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, Castile soap, and citric acid. Those are my top 6. Additionally, investing in durable, reusable items saves money in the long run compared to continually purchasing single-use plastics and disposables, or as we call it, single-use pollution.
Thank you so much for all of your insights, Karen. I know, Adriana, your refillery has probably given you a unique perspective on helping people make these affordable, sustainable swaps. So I wanted to know more about your insight on low impact living.
Yes, thank you very much, Rachel. And I love what Karen said and giving us those very practical tips. I'll give you 3 examples of how you can live low impact and save over $300 in a year. One example, and Karen alluded to this, is buying reusable things rather than the throwaway ones. An example is this Swedish dishcloth. This is a reusable paper towel. It lasts you 6 to 9 months. And one of these guys costs 7, 8, maybe $10, depending on the store. But buying paper towels over and over again in a year, you can spend up to $150 just buying paper towels. So I can buy 1 or 2 of these and it'll last me most of the year instead of continually buying the throwaway one-use paper towel. Another example are razors, shaving razors. So a lot of these disposable ones are badly made, so you need to keep changing them, whether it's the head or the whole razor themselves. Again, you can spend over $100 a year on replacing those versus if you buy a a metallic reusable razor, you just buy the blades, which are only a few dollars for like a 10 pack, and you can save $100 or more in a year. The third example, and Karen talked about this one, is water bottle. So this is my mug that I take outside for water and for coffee. So when you're out and about and you don't have water, you're buying water bottles, or some people even buy them for their household. That's actually a lot of money going out of your pocket just on water, which in a lot of jurisdictions here in the US in particular is free. You buy a good filter and you can save hundreds of dollars. So living low impact in a sustainable way does not have to break your budget. Find the things that work for you, and these three examples are really good to start with.
Definitely, thank you. And I know that everyone is going to be more interested in knowing more about your own success story, so could you please share that in helping others in their journey to sustainability?
Yes, thank you very much. Let me tell you a little story about that I remember when I was a little girl. I think um, I was really drawn to nature. And I remember going to the Galapagos Islands when I was little, maybe about 8 or 9 years old. And I was awed by the natural beauty of the islands. It has some of the most unique species of animals and plants that you find nowhere else on Earth. A lot of the islands are uninhabited, and so it's pristine, it's beautiful, the cleanliness. And I remember very clearly the guide telling us not to take anything from the beaches, shells or sand or anything like that, because even though we think it looks nice or neat, or like it's curious for our own use, if every tourist takes a handful of sand, the Galapagos would be depleted in a lifetime, and it's such a valuable, such a beautiful place. So I remember that very clearly. And then when I came home, I remember seeing some seashells in a friend's aquarium, and this friend had gone with us to the Galapagos Islands. And I asked their parents where they got it, and she said very nonchalantly, "Oh, we got it on the beach in the Galapagos Islands." And I just remember being so incensed that somebody had so little respect for the natural world, for something so beautiful that we share. So I had this passion from an early age. And at some point in my life, maybe in my late 20s and early 30s, I learned about the impact of plastic in our environment, especially the piece about how it stays around and pollutes our environment for hundreds of years, and that a piece of plastic is made to last much beyond our human lifetimes. So I became aware of that, and started cutting down on single use. So I stopped using plastic bags. I stopped asking for straws. So 2 or 3 simple steps. I stopped using plastic bottles, and from there it became a natural progression to slowly and step by step doing a few more things. Once something became part of a routine, I would tackle a new area in my life that I felt I can improve to reduce my impact on the world and also reduce waste. So now, for example, one of the more recent sustainable practices I incorporated, and I will say this was one of the most difficult ones. It was using a menstrual cup. And so it's okay to start slow and kind of work your way up, and you tackle the easy things. Once you are used to that and it becomes part of your routine, then it's easier to tackle some of the more challenging things, or some things that require more of a learning curve. Did
Thank you
that
so
answer your
much.
question?
Yes, I think that's such an inspiring story for me, and I know a lot of other young people relate to how you feel, especially talking about the Galapagos Islands, and it really shows meaningful change in our community. And before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you one last time, like, what do you think? I know you talked about those like small transition steps, but what do you think is one of the most effective steps somebody can take to really start incorporating those
Mm-hmm.
transitions?
What I like to tell customers and people I know is start small. Doing a trash audit can be helpful, but it can also feel a little overwhelming. But doing a trash audit, meaning after a week, look at your trash and look at where the plastic items are coming from. You know, are they coming from prepackaged foods? Are they coming from takeout food? Are they coming from bathroom essentials like your soap and things like that? It starts to give you an idea of where the majority of your plastic trash comes from. Um, and what I tell people is don't tackle everything at once. That can be overwhelming. And um, uh, what I say is pick a lane, stick to that, and then move on when you feel comfortable in that lane. So Karen and Nabia had given us some examples. She said kitchen, bathroom. I think a couple of easy things I would recommend. There's a lot of kitchen implements that are fairly easy to replace with a more sustainable, reusable alternative. So, for example, instead of plastic sponges and brushes, you can choose a sponge or brushes that are made from natural materials that tend to be more regenerative, and they don't leave the microplastics. So, for example, bamboo brushes, coconut, cactus plant fibers. They're sponges made from plant fiber instead of plastic. So that kitchen part, and then again, the reusable paper towel, I think is fairly easy for most people to use. Another thing is in your bathroom, there's a lot of toilet paper is made from trees. So again, I I've gone to a point where I find that we're growing trees that take a long time to grow, and then we're cutting it down just to wipe away dirty stuff. It seems like an incredibly regressive thing to do for humans that can, talk to a computer and create images and a novel, So there's a lot of companies now that you can buy online, and you can buy bamboo toilet paper or recycled fiber toilet paper. And that way you're not carrying that big thing from the grocery store. So that's another easy way. And then again, in your everyday routine, toothpaste tablets that was mentioned. That way you don't have that tube, which is impossible to recycle. There's floss that come in reusable cases, so you're not buying the little plastic floss case again and again. Bamboo toothbrush is a good, easy way. So pick one area of your life and work on it, and don't get overwhelmed or kind of like sidetracked by what everybody else is doing, the influencers and all that. Everybody is in a different step in their journey to a healthier life and a sustainable lifestyle. So don't be pulled by these other people. Do your journey and know that there's no destination. There's no, like Karen said, there's no perfect zero waste or low waste. It's just always doing what you can. And when you learn something new, do a little better. I think there's a Maya Angelou quote. I'm kind of misquoting her there. So that's what I would suggest.
Okay, thank you so much once again for sharing everything. I know that everyone can take a little bit of what you said and start implementing it into their lifestyles. And I
Can
think
I,
that,
Rachel, can I do a little plug for a
yes, of
blog I wrote,
course.
which is specifically to help people reduce waste in their lives. So I wrote a blog about the sustainable products that I've incorporated in my life, and I've ranked them from easy to most challenging. And they're categorized by routines. So like doing dishes and food storage and your hair cleaning and body cleaning. So that way people can look at what routine they want to start with, and they can follow some of those suggestions. So if you go to my company's website, you can go to the blog, and it's the blog is called Practical Guide to Plastic Detoxing.
Thank you so much. I think that is going to be very helpful, especially when it can be very overwhelming when you don't know where to start exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people can take away a lot of important things from everything that you shared with us today. And I think that can wrap up our Q&A portion.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
That was great. Before we conclude, we'd like to thank each one of you for taking the time to join us today and learn more about low impact, zero waste living. We also want to thank our guest speakers, Karen Chambers and Adriana Cal, with thoughtful information for sharing their knowledge and experiences with us. If today's presentation sparked new ideas, or if you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out using the contact information on this slide. We also encourage you to support One Earth, One Chance tree planting initiatives and explore our upcoming sustainability resources, including the Ecopedia app. As we leave today, I'd like to end with one final thought. Creating a more sustainable future isn't the responsibility of one person, one company, or one government. It's something we build together through the choices we make every day. Whether your first step is carrying a reusable water bottle, reducing food waste, shopping more intentionally, or simply becoming more aware of your environmental impact, every action matters. We encourage you to continue learning, stay involved, and take advantage of the educational resources and opportunities offered by organizations like One Earth, One Chance. Together, we can help restore a cleaner, greener, and more sustainable planet. Thank you all once again for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.